Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal.
My whole life, even as a child, all I really thought about, I used to carry dolls around on a pillow, and I wanted to be a mom.
Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As always, my name is Anna, and welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays. Now, if this is your first time on my channel, hello, welcome. I am obviously a true crime YouTube channel. I cover lots of cases, mainly children, because I feel like children are the ones who just need their voices heard the most. So, with that being said, today we will be getting into another mommy killer, Diane Downs. So, if you like true crime, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and let's get started. Quick disclaimer, prior to this video, I did not know much about Diane Downs, other than she was a mom who was convicted of killing her child. I only know this because of when I was researching Susan Smith. Now, when I started researching, I did come across a website that claims Diane's innocence. So I'm going to go over the case with you, and then we're going to take a look at this site and see if their innocence is based off of opinion or fact. So, a rundown of the case. Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson, who will better be known as Diane Downs, was born August 7th, 1955, in Phoenix, Arizona, to her parents, Wesley Lindown and Willadine Fredrickson. In 1973, when Diane was 18, she would marry Steve Downs, and they would have 3 children together. Christy Ann Downs, who was born in 1974, and 2 years later, in 1976, Cheryl Lynn Downs would be born, followed by Stephen Daniel Downs, who was born in 1979. Now, after Stephen's birth, Steve, Diane's husband, would begin to suspect that Diane was not being faithful to him and that Stephen was not his child. He would go on to file for divorce, and that would be finalized in 1980. It's speculated that Diane Downs was also trying to get a divorce as well, because she was, in fact, having an affair with a married man named Robert Knickerbocker. This is a man she would have met when she was working at the post office. And just like any other affair, Diane would end up wanting more. And Robert just did not want kids. He made it clear to her that he did not want kids, period. Eventually, Diane would get transferred from Arizona to Oregon, and that is where this case begins. In May of 1983, Diane Downs and her 3 children, Christy, Cheryl, and Stephen, are living in Springfield, Oregon. At this point, since Diane moved, her relationship with Robert pretty much dwindled down. And since Robert didn't want kids, he had no interest in pursuing this affair and decided to work things out with his wife. On the evening of May 19th, 1983, Diane Downs would arrive to the emergency room bay of Mackenzie Williamette Hospital in Springfield, Oregon. Her 3 children, Christy, who would be 8, Cheryl, who's 7, and Stephen, or Danny as most called him, was only 3 years old. Doctors would find them in the back seat, covered in blood, along with the entire back of the car. They had been shot point blank. Cheryl Downs, at the young age of 7 years old, would unfortunately not make it and pass away. She would be announced dead upon entering the hospital. As for Christy, and Danny both would survive, but with life-altering injuries. Christy Downs, who was just 8 years old, would go against the odds and survive. Not only the attack on her life, but also a stroke that she would suffer as a result of the shooting. She would lose her ability to speak. However, through lots of therapy, she would regain her speech. 3-year-old Danny, like I said, would also survive. However, he would be left paralyzed. As for Diane, she would also be shot in the arm. Now, this is Diane Downs' version and what she told police. She would explain that she had taken her kids out for a drive, and they would be driving down Mohawk Lane when a shaggy-haired man flagged her down to the side of the dirt road. She would claim that the children were all asleep in the back seat, as the man demanded her car, and refusing, he would shoot into the car, shooting the kids and Diane. She would go on to explain that she was able to escape because after the shooting, she got out of the car, shoved the man down to the ground, pretended to throw her keys, and ran back into the car and drove off to the hospital. Investigators would initially believe Diane, since on the surface it looked plausible. However, there were some inconsistencies, as well as one obvious fact. Because aside from the bullet to her arm, she did not have any blood stains or blood spatter on herself. The reason that this would be considered suspicious is because of where the kids were in the car. Cheryl was in the front, Christy and Danny were in the back. With Diane being the driver and in the driver's seat, realistically, there's no way that she would not have gotten more than just one grazed bullet or blood on herself. While at the hospitals, doctors were unable to revive Cheryl after being shot twice in the chest and in the heart. They would work to save the lives, though, of her sister and brother, Christy and Danny. Christy, who was also shot twice in the chest, would suffer a stroke, and as a result, she would develop a speech impairment that would require about a year of therapy to get back. Danny would also be left with serious injuries after he was shot in the back. He would be left paralyzed. I've read some reports that state that he was paralyzed from the waist down, but he was paralyzed. As the investigation into the shooting was underway, investigators began to find inconsistencies in Diane's recalling of the shooting. Not only that, but both investigators and hospital workers would agree that the way that she acted when she received the news of her children was not that of an innocent parent. Doctors would recount that Diane seemed to be too calm after receiving the news of her children's conditions. Diane would also make a phone call as soon as she arrived to the hospital, and that call that she made would be to Robert Knickerbocker. Investigators had Diane's car and thoroughly went through it and found that no gun residue was in the driver's side of the car or even blood spatter from that side of the car. And since that side of the car, the driver's side, is where Diane claimed the shots came from, there had to be, at the very least, gunpowder residue on the driver's side of the car. Investigators would also reach out to Robert Knickerbocker to answer some questions. And when being interviewed, he would reveal that Diane Downs had made threats toward Mr. Knickerbocker's wife. He would also say that she would stalk him and that she owned a .22 caliber gun and that she had said she would be willing to kill his wife to be with him. Robert would also tell police that he was very clear to her. He did not want kids, hers or any others. Investigators would also confirm with Steve Downs Diane's ownership of a gun. He would confirm that it was in fact a .22 caliber gun, and through search warrants, they would find casings in her home that matched a .22 caliber gun. But the gun was never found. Over the next few months, investigators would continue to build their case, but it wasn't against this alleged shooter. It was against Diane. There was just too much against her. A neighbor would claim to police that Cheryl had told them just weeks before the accident that she feared her own mother. There would be two other pieces of evidence that could be used against Diane Downs. One was witnesses who saw her driving to the hospital, and she wasn't exactly being a concerning mother and rushing to the hospital. In fact, she was driving extremely slow given the circumstances. And when I mean extremely slow, I mean 5 to 7 miles per hour slow. The second piece of evidence that they had against Diane Downs was a surprise witness. When investigators uncovered all of this information, they came to the conclusion that the most likely scenario that supported the evidence that they had was that Diane Downs was the one to shoot the kids, that Diane Downs was the one who killed Cheryl. Diane Downs was the one who had made Christy suffer a stroke, and Diane Downs was the one who had paralyzed Danny. About 9 months after the shooting, on February 28th, 1984, Diane Downs would be arrested. She would be charged with 1 count of murder in the second degree, 2 counts of attempt to commit murder, and 2 counts of assault in the first degree. She would plead not guilty on all counts the following day. The state of Oregon versus Elizabeth Diane Downs would begin May 8th of 1984. This murder trial would last about a month, and many things would be revealed, including the fact that Diane Downs was practically 9 months pregnant with a child. And, as I mentioned earlier, there would be a surprise witness from the prosecution. Diane Downs' defense, of course, would be that she did not murder her children. The shaggy-haired man did. The prosecution would argue that Diane murdered Cheryl and attempted to murder Christy and Danny, all for the purpose of being with Robert Knickerbocker, since she knew that he did not want children. The prosecution, to support this claim, would have bullet shell casings from her home that matched the casings found in the car, witnesses who testified to the speed in which she was driving, and of course, the surprise witness, Christy Downs herself. Christy Downs' testimony would be pretty much the final nail in the coffin for Diane Downs, as she testified, quote, My mom shot Cheryl, then Danny, then me. End quote. She would go on to state that she witnessed her mom pull over to the side of the road, go to the back of the car, to the trunk, pull out a gun, and shoot them. Prosecutors would even ask her, who shot her? And Christy would reply, quote, my mom, end quote. Diane Downs' attorneys would argue that Christy's testimony was coerced based on the fact that Christy had spent the majority of the year under police care, since when she was going through therapy, a lot of police officials would be with her, and they argued that it was coerced. After the attorneys presented their cases, the jury would deliberate, and on June 17th, 1984, the jury of 9 women and 3 men would find Elizabeth Diane Downs guilty on all counts. She would be sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years, with possibility of parole after 25 years. Diane Downs would give birth shortly after the trial while in prison, and that baby, a girl, would actually be adopted out to a family. However, this isn't where the story of Diane Downs ends just yet. 1 month after being found guilty, Diane would escape prison on July 17th, 1984. She would be on the run for 10 days before being captured and taken back to prison, where she received added time of 10 years before being eligible for parole. She became eligible for parole most recently in 2019, but when she requested parole, it was denied. As for the surviving children, Christy and Danny would actually be adopted by the prosecutor, Fred Hughey. Mr. and Mrs. Hughey unfortunately could not have children of their own, so in my opinion, I believe that's why Fred Hughey took the case so serious, not only to get justice for these kids and putting Diane behind bars, but also he probably felt really triggered because him and his wife couldn't have kids, and yet this woman is killing hers. However, some supporters of Diane do assume that he, being the prosecuting attorney, as well as the person to adopt Christy and Danny, that this was all part of a conspiracy against Diane Downs, since the prosecutor was the one who had to gain from Diane being found guilty. So with that being said, and now with the knowledge of the case, let's look at a website, www.dianedowns.com, and see if this website claiming Diane's innocence is based off of opinion or evidence. So once we're on the site, the first thing that comes up is 1 through 7 of, I guess, why this person thinks that she didn't do it. So it says, I think it is important for everyone to know why I believe Diane Downs didn't shoot her children. Following is a list of reasons. James Jagger, attorney for the defense, said 383 leads that might have proved Diane's innocence were withheld by the prosecution. He said, quote, he made numerous requests for discovery, including requests for exculpatory material under Brady v. Maryland, end quote. He also said, quote, I felt I was at a great disadvantage to have been denied access to reports and notes corroborating Miss Downs' version of events, end quote. Number 2, trace metal tests were performed on Diane the night of the shooting. They were negative. Number 3, the shooter, according to the state, was well within the car and would therefore be covered with gunshot residue. Diane was not. Number 4, the shooter was covered with blood spatter and the ceiling of the car was. Diane was not. Number 5, the gun. Rugger number 14-76187. That Diane was convicted with what was subsequently found in a drug raid in Paris, California. Tests were run to determine if the ballistics matched the casings from the shooting site. They didn't. Number 6, why do you think the prosecuting attorney would adopt the children and then have another attorney send a letter to their grandparents instructing them not to visit them? Number 7, in 1993, we found people who were willing to swear that someone had confessed that he was the one who shot the Downs children. Their affidavits are listed below. Do you think the composite that was drawn on the night of the shooting looks like the confessed murderer? His friends thought it looked just like him. Look at him and decide for yourself. A confessed murderer. Just 2 days after Diane and her children were shot, James Clare Haynes began confessing to his friends and family that he was the one who killed Cheryl Downs and critically wounded Christy and Danny Downs. Sworn affidavits attest to Jim Haynes' confession. On November 10, 1993, Jim Haynes' partner, Clayton Nyston, told me on page 3 of his sworn affidavit, quote, 2 days after the shooting, Mr. Haynes told me he was the one who shot the Downs woman and her kids, end quote. Looks like they have a PDF of this. And then moving on February 24th, 1998, Mr. Nyston told the federal public defenders on page 3 of a sworn affidavit, quote, the day after that, I saw Haynes again, and then he told me he was the one who had shot the Downs family, end quote. And then it goes to a secondary PDF. Here's the thing, though, is that is called hearsay, which means that it's not allowed in a court of law, because in a court of law, you have to state what you actually witnessed, not what another person told you. So even if this is true, this is hearsay. Let's move on, though. The wife of James Haynes had this to say about him, quote, during our marriage, Haynes physically assaulted me many times. Haynes has held a loaded 9mm pistol to my mouth and a .357 Magnum to my temple, threatening to shoot me. Haynes attacked me and broke my nose. On one occasion, during another argument, Haynes threw my newborn baby down the stairs. Haynes attacked me so many times it is difficult to remember them all, but I can/will never forget the violence and horrible crimes he has committed, nor the confessions he has made to me of brutal murders in the Willamette Valley area. Mr. Haynes has told me he is the stranger who shot the Downs family, end quote. And then it gives a link to an affidavit from Phyllis Hayes, and then goes on to say, or listen to what Phyllis had to say in a recorded conversation. Quote, he has beat me, blood, many times, end quote. And then it gives an MP3 of this recorded conversation. But again, this is hearsay. Now, this Haynes person can attest to the violence that they suffered at the hands of James. Phyllis can testify to that because she actually is the one who went through those alleged beatings. But anything beyond what Mr. Hayes would have told them, it's hearsay. Then it moves on to a photo of, and on the left, you see the sketch that Diane Downs gave to police. And on the right, you see a photo of this James Haynes person. I mean, maybe, but I'm sorry, but I go with facts. And the fact is that a little 9-year-old girl said, "My mom shot me," under oath. So there really is a lot more on this website. I am tempted to make a second video specifically on this website. So if that is something that you are interested in, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Either way, I will have this website linked down below for you if you want to check it out. But this last section here that talks about the murder weapon, it states, Diane moved from Arizona to Oregon in early April 1983, and the shooting was on May 19, 1983. The state said Diane used Steve Downs' gun to shoot her children. Diane said the gun was in Arizona with her ex-husband. She said she didn't have the gun. So I ran an ad in the Arizona Republic newspaper for a week in 1984 offering a reward for the Ruger number 14-76187. This ad resulted in a letter from Prescott, Arizona from a man saying he had the gun. It was learned later that the man who sent the letter worked as a security guard at Fort Whipple, just outside of Prescott. The sheriff's office in Oregon eventually gave a press release that the report was a hoax. The newspaper article said that Detective Defendaffer of the Prescott, Arizona Police Department had conducted the investigation. A few years later, I contacted this detective. I'm not going to say his name again. I'm just going to say this detective to discuss his investigation. According to the detective, Detective Dick Tracy from Oregon conducted the investigation alone. He did not go with Detective Tracy on the investigation. A few months later, the gun was found in a drug raid in Paris, California. This is the area where Detective Tracy had been employed before moving to Oregon. Lane County, Oregon, recovered the weapon and ran tests to determine if it was the gun used in the shooting. The ballistics from the shooting site didn't match the Ruger number 14-76187. The gun Diane had been convicted of using to shoot her children was not the murder weapon. The state's theory that Diane had used that pistol in the shooting of her children was in jeopardy, so the state then decided she must have used another gun. I will say this, anything is plausible, but again, facts. This page is hearsay. Yes, there's PDFs that support what this person is saying, but again, this is all hearsay. But again, I am interested in going further into this website. So if you are interested, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. So that is the case of Diane Downs. What is your opinion on this case? Do you think that she's innocent? Do you think Christy's testimony could possibly have been coerced? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video for more. And again, if you enjoy true crime, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.
Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal.